There's been a glimmer of hope at Walsall off the field over the last couple of years. Lee Pomlett has steadied the ship after relegation to League Two, and Ben Boycott, coming in as co-owner, has said all the right things as part of Trevella Group, but it hasn't translated into results just yet on the pitch, and Walsall have been perennial mid-table fodder in League Two. It's a trend they're going to have to try and change over the next couple of years, but is Mat Sadler the man to do it? He's not managed in senior football before. He's an internal appointment. Is he the right person to bring about this new era at Walsall, or would the club have been better off looking at other options? There's a lot to dive into, and I'm delighted to be joined by Simon from Walsall Fan TV to discuss all of this. How are you, Simon?
I'm very good, mate. Good to see you, Gabriel.
Yeah, great to see you, mate, as always. We should say, by the way, this is also available on YouTube and Spotify. If you're watching or listening to this on those platforms, do go subscribe because it helps us out a lot. I'm covering all 72 clubs across the EFL between mid-June and mid-July. There's been a few that have already been uploaded, so go check those out once you're done with this one. First question for you then, Simon. How do you reflect on the last few years in this corner of the Black Country?
Fairly depressing, really. As you know, on the channel, we talk about the joy and the pain. Since 2015, really, it's been sort of deeper and deeper pain. The Trevella takeover sort of gave us hope, really. The end of the Bonser era as well. And now sort of purchasing our own ground, that's sort of taking the grasp off Bonser, as it were. So things are improving, and the Trevella boys, particularly Ben Boycott, has talked about a steady incremental improvement. Of course, everybody would like that to be sort of overnight transition, but the reality is it has been a steady improvement. And last season was looking much better. And obviously until the debacle with Danny Johnson sort of scuppered us. We were sort of looking like we were going to make playoffs. And then it sort of all fell apart. But I think the building blocks are there. I think the players that Walsall are bringing in, both last season and this season, have been better quality players. I don't think we're scraping the barrel as we were previously. So that's good that we're moving in the right direction, as you say. But the position in the league hasn't really sort of moved forward, which is a concern, of course. Which is a concern.
Yeah, I think there's two things for me. First of all, I really like the look of Ben Boycott. I think he could absolutely be the right person to take Walsall Football Club forward, and I've been very impressed with him in lots of ways. But I'm not sure that I agree with him on the decision to appoint Mat Sadler, because normally I think an internal appointment is a good idea or a better idea if you've had a successful period where you want to just minimize continuity and sort of keep the same sort of operation in place and not change too much. That's my phone going off. I'll have to turn that off there. You want to minimize continuity. And I feel like you want to minimise change, Whereas I think with Walsall, because the results haven't been there on the pitch over the last few years, I'd find it a little bit uninspiring.
I think the word underwhelming was sort of the wholehearted view of it, really. But I think if you look at the way Walsall defensively got sorted last year, and ignoring the fact that the goals dried up when Danny Johnson went, Walsall had shown great progression. And in some ways, continuing that progression with Mat Sadler does make some sense rather than completely changing the management again. It does give us an element of continuity, even though the results haven't 100% got there. It is a risky appointment. I think that's very clear. But we know ourselves, don't we? Some managers that have done very well have gone elsewhere, and then it hasn't worked out for them, and then it's another rebuilding job. Like Michael Flynn, got a great reputation, and then it just wasn't happening at Walsall. Playing way too defensive football, and despite his excellent track record, talking to the Newport fans, that's what we're going to have. Just very ultra defensive, trying to snatch a goal and then defend for the rest of the game. It's not typically the Walsall way. Walsall historically have always played very good passing football. And
Have you?
yeah, they have. Yeah, you forget. Maybe you're too young for that. I don't
No,
know.
the Dean Smith era was good, but either side of the Dean Smith era, I would say Walsall haven't necessarily played passing football. But
Before that, I think we've got time with Ray Graydon and
okay.
with Richard Money.
Sure.
And going back to sort of the end of the Buckley era, really,
Mm.
with Gary Childs, David Priest, that sort of midfield work going on. That was good. And then we had the Pedro Matthias, Zigor Aronaldi, and George Lato in that sort of era. There's some excellent. I remember the chant. We haven't heard this chant for a long time, and I don't know whether I should sing it. Really, it's just like watching Brazil. Was the chant, but we haven't heard that chant for a while. But generally, it was at times very good passing football, and we haven't seen that, as you being much younger than I. No, that hasn't been anywhere near. So last couple of games of last season, we saw a little bit of passing football, trying to actually play the game properly, as many would say. So that passing football coming back and getting the players in that have the quality to be able to do that is key. I think Mat Sadler, he tried to play passing football, but he hadn't got the players at that point to be able to do that properly. So he came unstuck with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a serious point to it, Si, which is I think since Dean Smith left, I've seen a few Walsall fans where it's like the plan revolves around one player. So under John Whitney, it was give it to Oztumer. Under Dean Keats, it was give it to Cook. And it's felt like for a long time now, there hasn't really been a clear sort of identity at Walsall.
Yeah.
And I think that's the big thing that I'm actually quite excited about with what Ben Boycott has said, because he's outlined in one of his sort of notices to supporters, actually saying specifically what he wants on the pitch. And I think from a previous regime at Walsall, the attitude would have been, well, it's up to the manager to bring the idea.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I think you need you need some sort of, you need a vision that is actually independent from the manager, that the manager or head coach shares, but actually there's some sort of continuity between managers, and I think that's a really big thing. And hopefully Mat Sadler can deliver that.
I think that's ultimately why Mat Sadler got the job, I think, because other managers would have had their own style that they wanted to put across. Ben Boycott was very clear the way he wanted Walsall to play. And Mat Sadler knows that vision and follows that vision. And with the position he was in, with the position Mat Sadler was in, it's, I'll play wherever you want me to do, sort of thing, because of his inexperience. Where if we'd got somebody with more experience coming in, it's like, well, no, I'll decide how we play. And then they get took out for that. There was argument that some managers turned it down, but whether he was turned down or they were just went with Sadler in the end, I don't know. Sadler perhaps is somebody they got a better chance of controlling, I think. And
that's quite a cynical word, Si.
Well, I mean, controlling is sort of like, this is the way I want you to play. Get your team to play this way. Where if you say that to an experienced manager, the manager's going to be like, well, I've got the experience. I'll do what I want to do. This is the way we should play. And and I think what you sort of touched on, I think when Walsall brought Mike Flynn in, it was like, oh, he's a good manager, get him in. Rather than sort of, this is the way Walsall want to play. Who is the right guy to help us do that?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think that's so important, considering the sort of identity that you want your team to play, and then appointing from there. I think we discussed off air, Simon, what Walsall are going to need this summer. You've already made a few additions, but the main area I think is up top.
Yeah, the problem the problem is, like as we say, we've brought some good players in, which we'll talk about briefly in a moment. But strikers are the expensive ones, aren't they? And that's where the budget is really tested. So bringing in solid centre halves, bringing in an improved midfield is great. But if you're going to go anywhere in the division, you need good quality strikers,
Mm.
and that's not an area where you can scrimp. You need the quality there,
Yeah.
and that's
Mm.
Danny Johnson. Obviously, if he was to come back in, that would be sort of definitely one that ticks the box.
Well, Nigel Clough is staying on at Mansfield, so that would suggest there's an increased likelihood that Darren Johnson is going to be available.
Yeah, well, he's out of contract. He's out of contract,
Oh,
so
that's okay. Right.
he's talking to different people. If he can get a move to League One, you wouldn't blame him really.
Mm.
But he's still in conversations with Walsall, I understand. So
I think if
dialogue's
he'd
there.
finished, yeah, I think if he'd found form at Mansfield in the second half of last season, he'd probably would be looking at a League One move. But I think because he didn't really play for them, I think that probably tips it more in your favour in terms of getting him back.
Yeah, I think if talking to a Leighton Orient fan that was on my channel, he was saying Danny Johnson, as always, had a very good first half of the season and always had a very poor second half. So maybe Walsall had the best of him, and whether we had him for a full season, whether that would work out, I don't know. But I think just adding Danny Johnson to the squad would not be enough for Walsall to be challenging anywhere near top 7. I think it's going to be a very tough division, as we know. So we need more than just one addition. I think at the moment we've got Jamil Mat. I think he's past his best, I think. Even though I think he'll get some goals for us next season.
I still think I'm not going to write Jamil Matt off though, Simon, because he's been part of Forest Green sides that have challenged for promotion at this level and won the title. He's been part of some really successful teams in this league, and granted, he might not have the mobility that he had a few years ago. I don't see any reason why he couldn't still be an effective target man at this level.
Yeah, I think if he gets over 10, I think he'll have done well.
But as an option from the bench, maybe as well.
Yeah, I think. Well, I think Andy Williams for Walsall. He was the experienced, steady head, really, and I don't think it quite worked out as well for him as he would have liked at Walsall. But I think Jamil Matt is sort of like an improvement on that kind of player. I think it's like the elder statesman who, as you say, could come off the bench and sort of help to secure a victory, sort of thing.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely felt like the goals dried up last season, and I think it probably helped because, well, this is the interesting thing. Do you feel like creativity just massively dropped off last season, and maybe with a more progressive style of play, you can get some creativity back? That means you're not going to rely on having a poacher that's as clinical as Danny Johnson can be.
Yeah, I think, yeah. Creativity. What Hutch was the one, Isaac Hutchinson. He played in patches. Really, he had a very good start to the season. Went off it massively, and then as the season went on, he did start to come back on it again.
He's capable, Isaac Hutchinson. I think he was a little bit inconsistent last year, but I can see there's another gear in him.
Yeah, was it 7 goals, 6 assists last season? I think.
Yeah.
Is a good return for
I mean, if he can turn it on for a full campaign, then he could be one of the best players in the league, couldn't he?
Yeah, that's right. I think if he played consistently, but that's the challenge, of course, in League Two.
Sure.
If players were consistent, they wouldn't be playing in League Two for long, would they? So that's.
Yeah.
But I mean, if he gets to that point, then people will come knocking for him. No doubt.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hopefully that's going to be the case. Do you think Mat Sadler is going to build this midfield this season around Isaac Hutchinson?
It's hard to say, really. I think it looks like he's going to go for the 3-5-2 again.
3-5-2, yeah.
So with Hutch at the front of the diamond, effectively there, He's one that we've got to have as a focal point. We've got Ram, of course. He's coming in. He's looking to be having more game time.
Do you know what? I'm really going to be fascinated to see what happens with Ronan Mayer, because I think clearly him and Michael Flynn didn't quite see eye to eye, and there wasn't, you maybe didn't have quite the right sort of management that he would have needed to have played more often last season. But I think under a coach like Mat Sadler, is there a world in which Ronan Mayer actually comes in and takes the world by storm?
Well, I think there's a possibility. Obviously, you don't know really until they get into sort of 10, 15 starts under the belt, until they're really going to do it or not. But I mean, he has got a possibility that he could sort of have proper competition for Hutch next season.
That's quite nice, because you've got Hutchinson, who I think is a really capable attacking midfielder, but then being able to bring in Ronan Mayer for the odd game if Hutchinson's injured or suspended, that could be quite a nice way of dripping Ronan Mayer in without putting too much pressure on him.
Well, I think perhaps as a typical thing, sort of giving Hutch sort of 70 minutes and then giving the last 20 minutes to Ronan Mayer, and then if Hutch is sort of off the pace and having a drop in form, starting Ronan Mayer and seeing how he does from the start.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see
there's other players we can jump in there, but I mean, this has got to be the season where Ronan Mayer arrives. If he doesn't arrive this season, then I think he'll be moving on somewhere else. I think it's time at his age, sort of coming to 19 nearly. I think if he wants to break through and do well in the game, he needs to do it sooner rather than later.
Yeah, totally. In terms of the midfield, then, do you think Liam Kinsella's going to stay this season?
Liam Kinsella's gone.
Oh, he's gone. Sorry, where did he go?
Yeah, Liam Kinsella has been released at the end of the season.
Oh, he was released. I'm sorry, I missed that one. Oh, right.
No, that's okay. Liam Kinsella. We had some interesting fan chats on the channel last season, and one of the questions asked was, "Do you see us getting promoted with Liam Kinsella in the side?" And the painful answer to that was no. As excellent as a CDM he was, he just didn't contribute enough to the rest of the team other than just winning the ball. Which
I think it's partly a stylistic thing though with Liam Kinsella, Simon, because I think he was playing in a team under Michael Flynn that always goes long, so it's kind of difficult, I think, for Liam Kinsella to do that. But I've definitely seen Liam Kinsella have games where he's actually picking up the ball from the defence and playing it around quite nicely. It's not like he's picking sort of Hollywood balls to the flanks, but I think he's probably a little bit better on the ball than giving credit for. That's just my perspective on it.
Yeah, so I mean, he had been with Walsall for a long time. I think there's some comments some fans had made to me that Liam Kinsella won Player of the Season for numerous times without any goals or assists, which from midfield sort of is a bit.
No, but if you're operating deeper, like Ruben Neves, for example, who's just probably going to go to Newcastle. Like, he's not necessarily.
Ruben Neves, he's going to Saudi.
Yeah, but they're probably going to send him to Newcastle as part of a loophole thing. But anyway, the point being, sometimes you can be a really good midfielder without. I'm not comparing Liam Kinsella to Ruben Neves, obviously, but before that one gets quoted. But I do think that you can judge midfielders on something other than goals and assists. Because if they're playing in a deeper role, it's harder to get those big numbers.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. It'd be interesting what happens to him next. I think the change will do him good. Whether he goes to Swindon and follows Michael Flynn or not, be interesting. But we haven't heard. It's quite surprising, really. Because a couple of players that were sort of key for us last season, Manny Month and Kinsella, both of those have been released. The thought was Manny Month had already agreed a contract elsewhere, but here we are, end of June, and he's there's no announcement yet that he's signed anywhere else. So it's hard to know what went on, whether something went on within the club or not. But obviously, with Mike Flynn leaving, it wouldn't have been a Mike Flynn thing, and so I don't know. One of the interesting players that we bought in that was released by Blues, Ryan Stirk.
Yeah.
He's an interesting choice, I think. And I think
Yeah. I do you know what?
maybe a Kinsella who's got a bit more about him going forward, perhaps.
Yeah, hopefully. Whether he's going to be as aggressive as Liam Kinsella, I think we'll see. But I think he had a good loan spell at Mansfield a year or two ago, and after that, I was actually hoping that he would sort of elevate by going up to League One possibly. And then I think the last 12 months hasn't quite gone to plan for him. But he went to Bromley. I think it was Bromley, and did quite well.
Yeah, he did well at Bromley. Yeah, ran the show apparently at Bromley when he was there.
Okay. Well, that sounds pretty hopeful, and maybe he's a better one for the style of play that Walsall are looking to, because I know he's very technical. He's got a lovely left foot. He can control games, pull the strings. So that sounds like because this is the other thing. As much as I personally feel Liam Kinsella is better on the ball than given credit for, I don't think he's a Neanderthal. I do think that. Walsall haven't really had a proper midfield controller for quite a few years.
No.
Perhaps but yeah, I think that's hopefully Ryan Fixture can be that.
Well, I think it looks like O'Shane McEntee is going to be playing in midfield because he strictly speaking, is a centre half. Last couple of games of last season, he sort of played him in the middle, and he looked very good in the middle. So having somebody of that stature, that size and stature, alongside Ryan Stirk, that could work very well.
Yeah, if O'Shane McEntee goes into midfield, then say, where does that leave the defence? You've mentioned there that Manny Monte is going.
Hayden White has gone as well.
Yeah, Hayden White's gone.
So at the moment, there is a rumour that Daniels has been touted by Swindon, but that would be a sizable fee if he did leave because he's under contract.
Yeah, because he's contracted to 2024, isn't he?
Yeah. So Donovan Daniels in the middle of the three. Chris Hussey, a sign from Stockport. He's an older player. Initially, I was a bit concerned about that one, thinking we've got another Peter Clark on our hands. But talking to the Stockport fans, my Stockport contact, they were really disappointed he left. He hadn't been released from there. He just decided not to sign a new contract. So he was one of their best defenders and their first choice centre half.
Yeah, he played on the left of back three. He's a wing back by trade. I'm slightly concerned sometimes with older players in that kind of position because I feel like there is a lot of whether it's a wing back or an outside centre back, because there is a lot of emphasis on having the athleticism, and we've seen players like Stephen Ward at Walsall. I thought Stephen Ward, when he first signed, was a great signing, and he didn't cut it at all. So that's a little bit of a worry for me whether Chris Hussey is going to get caught out in 1v1s. But I think in terms of quality, he certainly got it.
But I think you say that, but I think Stockport, he was regular for Stockport, but he played most games for Stockport last season. He was there in the playoff final playing for Stockport. So I don't think he's that slow.
Sure.
But the good news for me, the other one of the three is Priestley Farquharson. I think we'll call him the Priest. I think.
Or Lord Farquhar.
I think we call him the Priest. That Walsall have signed from Newport. Again, Newport are absolutely gutted that he's left them. They thought he was going to League One. I think for interceptions, he was one of the top performers in League Two last season. And he's very quick. So in the back three, having somebody there that's got the pace, a bit sort of like your Kyle Walker, can sort of get yourself out of trouble.
That's quite exciting, actually, because I think Chris Hussey might be able to do it in one-on-ones because he has got that experience playing as a fullback. He might not be able to compete with like super athletic players, but he might be able to sort of hold his own. And then if you've got Farquharson covering, then that could be a big plus, couldn't it?
Yeah, I think that could work, and I think they're all decent ball players as well. So
I think Hussey's going to be a good ball player because he's very technical. I don't think Farquharson's going to be particularly technical.
Not over technical. Oh, okay. I haven't seen
That's
much
not
of
that's
him. I've seen a
yeah,
few
that's
clips
not
of
what I
him,
would
and
be expecting personally.
yeah, I've seen a few clips from the Priest, and looks like he's decent ball player as well, I think.
Okay.
But obviously, interceptions and clearing the lines is sort of primary responsibility. But if
Yeah,
you've
and
got
then
someone
I
with
think if you
Donovan
have someone like
Daniels and Hussey in there, there's plenty of options for playing further forward and playing
hmm.
out. And Hussey
Do
likes
you
to bring
play
the ball out,
Daniels on the
doesn't he?
right now? Do
Pardon?
you play Daniels on the right?
I think Daniels probably be in the middle, I thought.
Okay, and Farkas on the right.
Yeah, on the right hand side.
Okay.
But I think Hussey likes to bring the ball out, so he's quite good with assists.
Mm.
So possibly.
Yeah, I can see based on the style of play that they'll probably want Hussey on the left of the three, and then a sort of more explosive left wing back type.
Yeah.
Remind me actually, Simon, who have you got in those current positions at the moment?
The left wing back at the moment is Liam Gordon.
Lim Gordon, right? Okay.
Liam Gordon is he's been off on international duty with Guyana rather. He's a player really that sort of really he had an injury at the start of the season, so he sort of came into it without a pre-season effectively. But I think we see a lot more from him next season. He's very athletic, very quick. But I think under Mike Flynn, he was holding him back a bit. I think Mat Sadler will be more interested in trying to get him forward and get him creating assists. He got his first assist of the season in the last but one game. Scored an excellent goal in one of his first games back. But I think there's a lot more to come from him. I was surprised actually the cover for him, Taylor Allen. He's had a new contract. I thought he'd have been let go, to be honest, because he
Yeah,
hadn't really.
he didn't tear up trees last season, did he?
No. To be honest, we played him in the pre-season match against Villa, and he looked awesome in that. But
And against Hartlepool on the opening day.
yeah, but yeah, this maybe let's see something in him that we can get more out of him, perhaps. But he needs to improve. I think.
Did he play more under Sadler last season when he took charge, or
No?
no? Okay, that's interesting, isn't it? That he didn't really play under Sadler, and yet his contract has been released.
Yeah, but no, he's been renewed rather. Yeah, he's had a new contract. Tyler.
Yeah, he's had a new contract. So, we'll see. In terms of the wing back spots, obviously Liam Bennett was so influential in the first half of last season.
Yeah.
Probably it's wishful thinking that you'd get him back. He's not leaving Cambridge, is he? So, how are you feeling about right wing back at the moment?
Well, Joe Riley slotted in there when he eventually got fit, and there weren't many players that went past him. So he's positive for next season. The backup for him, Joe Fowkes, who's done so well at Kidderminster. So he's signed on now. He'd been at Kidderminster for a couple of years on loan. And
Fowkes the left back? I thought Fowkes was the left back. Or am I thinking
plays on the right back.
Okay, plays right back. Okay.
For a couple of years, I thought he was left back, but no, he has been playing right back for them.
Okay, right.
Unless I'm wrong again, which is possible. I'm wrong often.
Can triple jump to the wrong conclusion. Yeah, I don't know.
He's a fullback, definitely. That's it.
He's a fullback. Yeah, we'll say that. We'll go that far.
Maybe he can play both. I think we'll go with that.
Okay. So do you think you're going to recruit? Because Joe Riley can also play in midfield. Is there a possibility that another right wing back comes in?
I don't think so. Because
really?
Because you've also got Tom Knowles, who I think his best position is probably right wing back or wing right wing for Tom Knowles.
I thought he did play really well there against Mansfield on New Year's Day, because there's a very sort of effervescent energy about him. He seems to be able to cover great distance without looking like he's really straining when he runs. It's like there's something
very agile player,
effortless about it, which I really like. But I sometimes wonder whether do you want to free him up more, or can, in the system that Mat Sadler is going to have, which is probably going to be different to Michael Flynn's, can he make it work by keeping a Knowles really high up the pitch and then another really attacking left wing back? So keeping those players really high up the pitch, are the wing backs going to be really important to the way Mat Sadler plays?
I'm wondering what will happen with Knowles, because he has been playing him up front, but I don't think he's not the centre forward. I think sort of right wing or right wing back is more of his position. I think we should be bringing in strikers that will push him down the pecking order in that position.
Do you know what I mean? Yeah, it's interesting you say that, actually, because I remember I've watched Walsall a couple of times last year, and I'm thinking about it now. I did think that Knowles impressed more against Mansfield when he played as a wing back than he did maybe against, I think it was against Rochdale, when he played in attack. So maybe that there's some sense in that. But how many more players do you think are going to be required, Simon, to make sure that the style of play that Mat Sadler wants to execute can be done efficiently?
I don't think we've got many more to bring in. I think an out and out winger as an option would be a good idea.
See, I get a lot of people who say this when their team is recruiting for a 3-5-2, that you want something different. But I feel like if you bring in a winger, they've got to be able to fit into the primary formation, because otherwise it's a waste of a wage. So I think if you bring in a winger, they've got to be able to play wing back or maybe up top or something like that.
Well, generally, I think with a lot of the wingers, they can play across the front three as well, can't they? So
do you think it'll be 3-4-3?
Yeah, that's 3-4-3 sort of adaptation of the 3-4. I think 3-5-2 will be the standard. I thought we'd be playing 4-4-2, to be honest, but with the signing of Hussey and Farquharson, I think that sounds like he is sticking with the three at the back.
Yeah. Will be really interesting to see what they go with. What do you think next season holds for Jack Earing then, Si?
Jack Earing, he's out injured. They've renewed his contract, but I think it's more of a care package, really.
Like a Wilkinson type situation.
Yeah, I haven't heard exactly. They talk about his serious foot injury, but I don't know when he's going to be back for. I don't think he's going to be back for pre-season training. I think he's so I don't think he's a player we can rely on for this season. We've also got Roland Mayonnaise. He's returned from Hartlepool, and again he's had an injury as well. I think he broke his leg, didn't he?
See, I've liked Roland Mayonnaise for a long time. I think he's a very capable defender. For whatever reason, for patches of form, he didn't really cut it for yourselves. But I think he's quick, he's strong. I think he can be good on the ball. So yeah, for me, I think if you want an outside centre back in a back three, I think he might suit that more than Don. I think it'd suit playing sort of wide in the back three, definitely. So hopefully he can have a big season.
I think both Roland and Jack Earing are not going to be fit for the first part of the season. So they're sort of in the shadows, as it were. We are very limited for centre forwards and forward players, and as we touched on, they are the more expensive.
Sure.
I think if we get DJ in, I quite like the thought of Andrew Dallas joining us.
Oh, from Solihull Moors.
Yeah, Solihull Moors. So now he's out of contract with Solihull Moors. It's strange that Neil Ardley has mutually agreed to leave his position for Solihull Moors. Whether he's off to Shrewsbury or not, we don't know. But it possibly could be a bit of frustration on his part that they couldn't get Andrew Dallas to stay. So I think Andrew Dallas is going to be signing for somebody else, I think, whether that's Walsall or whoever, I don't know. But I think he'd be a good addition to Walsall's strike force. I think we need somebody like DJ as well. So if we had DJ, Matt and Andrew Dallas as 2 from 3 to pick from, I think that's a good starting point, I think. One of our youngsters, marvellous Honor Byra Hanlon, we'll call Marv. He's I saw him in the Walsall Senior Cup and he looks a bit of a handful, but I think maybe it's a little bit early for him. Yet,
Where
I
does
think
he play? Sorry,
he's centre forward,
centre forward. Okay, right.
physical centre forward. I'm still frustrated that Shea Willock was released, because I thought Shea Willock was much more first team ready than
He was further down the trajectory, wasn't he?
Yeah, but hey ho, I'm not always right, or rarely right. What is it? I can't think.
Yeah, absolutely. So could you give me an idea of numbers? I mean, looking at the squad just now, it seems as though you've got, let me just work this out, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 15, 16, 17 senior players at the moment, and then
Yeah,
you've got
we've
20. So
got
again,
17, which would include Rowling and Jack Earing.
so 15 in terms of players that are ready to go in straight away. I mean, that's not loads. I mean, because whether you want to give the likes of Joe Folks, Rie Sawyers, George Barrett, and some of the youth players, marvellous, the ones you mentioned, a bit of an opportunity in pre-season before you bring in. But, I mean, to have 15 fit senior players to start the season, that, obviously you'll bring in a couple of forwards, which would take it up to 17, but maybe a few more numbers in there.
Yeah, I think we definitely need 3 strikers. I think 3 strikers, a backup goalkeeper. I think Barrett's probably a bit not quite ready for that. I think Jackson Smith came on loan from the Wolves end of last season, so perhaps he'll come back and have a season loan. So that'd be
two
one.
surnames.
Pardon?
2 surnames.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, just to keep us guessing.
Absolutely.
3 strikers, maybe a defensive midfielder who could play midfield or centre half. So a bit of cover there, given that Rowling is not fit yet, and some versatile players, I suppose. And then you've got some loan players, a couple of loan players from sort of like Premier League teams, perhaps, or something like that, just to help pad out the squad.
Sure. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Talking of the goalkeeper situation, how happy are you with Owen Evans as your number 1 going into next season?
Owen Evans, he did a good job. I'm happy with him. Yeah. It's an interesting question whether we should have an experienced backup or just have a youngster and save a wage as such. But I think I'd stick with Owen Evans. I think he's fair player. I think did a good job.
Yeah, I think sometimes what you want is a sort of 36-year-old that's looking to go into goalkeeper coaching, so that you can then loan out to George Barrett and give him some first team experience. Because sometimes if you're an 18-year-old, you don't necessarily want them on the bench all the time.
Yeah, I think experienced old keeper, maybe that might work. Yeah. That's lower. It's controlling you. Obviously, the budget is not sort of endless unless you're Wrexham. So
you're shopping in Poundland, sorry.
Yes, we're shopping in Poundland. That's it. Not in Disneyland. That's it.
Not in Disneyland, no. So I'm going to be really excited to see how the Sadlers recruit for next season, and I want to talk to you about Donovan Daniels actually, Si, because for me, I think he's capable of being one of the top defenders in League Two.
Definitely. Walsall defensively were very good last season. I think up until a bit of a nightmare. Thank you, darling. Just bringing in my Walsall mug, Sadler's forever.
Oh, right. What do you got? Your tea or coffee?
It's just tea. This is
nice tea, lovely. I'm glad you looked after Si.
She looks after me. She does, bless her.
Oh, bless.
Up until sort of a bit of a capitulation near the end of the season, Walsall were like the 3rd best defence in the league. So, and Donovan Daniels is a key part of putting that together. Hussey was the guy that sorted out the defence for Stockport. So the Stockport fans tell me. So, and we should be very solid defensively next season. It's just whether we can get the goals. It was lack of goals that sort of pulled us down, really. But I think a large part of that was the way Mike Flynn was playing. He wasn't sort of looking to create goals. He was just looking to
Yeah.
create clean sheets. So whether Mat Sadler goes too far the other way or not, I don't know. But if we can keep things, if we can keep things steady and get a few more goals, then we should be comfortably top half, I think.
Yeah, for sure. I think the issue you had last year was that although Danny Johnson was such a predatory finisher, he's not really an aerial specialist. And under Michael Flynn, because of the way he played, it was often a case of going long to Danny Johnson, even though he doesn't necessarily have those qualities. And then you brought in Jamil Matt in January and Matty Stevens, but neither of those had played much football, and they seem to struggle for sharpness. I mean, that's the thing I would hope with Jamil Matt, that after a full pre-season to get into tip-top condition, maybe there's a world in which he starts next season really strongly. But I totally agree with you. I think another forward's definitely required.
Yeah, I think I would say at least two more, maybe three more. So having options up front is important, I think.
Yeah, but you also Si, you've appointed Mat Sadler, who's I think I'm right in saying he's worked with the academy before. So do you want to create a pathway for some of the lads coming through the academy to break into the Walsall team? Because if I look at Walsall 8 years ago, you had a really good record of bringing players through under Dean Smith. I think since Dean Smith left, the players that have come into Walsall have from the academy has dropped off a cliff.
Dropped off a cliff is 100% correct. The pathway is not great at the moment. You mentioned Rio Sawyers. He was released, and Walsall released all of the second-year scholars, with the exception of Marv.
That seems kind of counterintuitive, doesn't it? That you appoint your academy coach and yet you release all the second-year scholars.
It doesn't make any sense. There's no, because we don't play in a reserve league, so or we don't have a reserve team effectively. So you've then got to, like when we played Rushall Olympic in the final of the Walsall Senior Cup, they were an experienced men's football effectively, and all the second year scholars were released before the final. So Walsall were playing effectively with 16, 17-year-olds against senior pros. And the only players that were older than that were Barrett in goal and Ronan Mayer.
Who's 18, 19. So
yeah, he's 18. Yeah, I think 18. Yeah. And they could have had a hatful, Rushall, to be honest. It looked like men v boys sort of thing, because it actually was men v boys. But as things went on, Ronan Mayer put himself about and made it close, to be honest. But Ronan is definitely a player that can play in men's football now. He's senior football. He's ready for it. Physically, he's developed well. He's not the tallest, but I mean, there's plenty of strength in there. He's done a lot of work conditioning, and he's ready for a go this season, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
But as far as players coming through, it's just not happened. Rob Williams, the academy manager, I tried to get him on the channel, but it was declined by the media team. And then the media team had an interview with him recently, and I wasn't impressed with it at all, to be honest.
I think the treatment of Miguel Lira set the club back from an academy perspective as well. So that's a disappointing aspect of it. In terms of the starting 11, then, Si, if we look at Walsall's best 11, how many of those players do you think currently sit in the squad right now?
I think other than a striker, I think we're ready. We've got to start in 11.
Really?
I think Hussey, Daniels, and the Priest as a back three. Stirk and McKenty in the middle.
It's a big gamble, though, to put that much faith in McKenty playing in central midfield. Okay, he's done well for a couple of games under Mat Sadler, but are you sure that you don't feel like you could do with one more?
Well, you've got Comley. You
How
got
highly do you rate Brandon Conley? Sorry.
Brandon Comley. I didn't rate him at all at the start of the season, but he did improve through the season. And in that lineup, if McKenty comes in there, that would put Comley into the bench, which would be he can play centre half or CDM. So maybe he's that cover. Maybe he'll come in there instead of McKenty. Maybe I'm only assuming McKenty is going to be there on the basis of those appearances last season and the players we've been bringing in. If it is
I think we've got to be careful.
Yeah.
I feel we've got to be careful though, Si, not to underestimate the loss of Liam Kinsella. I see him as a loss. Maybe Walsall fans will disagree with me, but I think that you've got to be careful about not weakening your midfield. So it's one thing coming to the conclusion that we'll release Liam Kinsella, but then you've got to strengthen the midfield. If it's a choice between Kinsella and Osin McKenty, I'd probably go for Liam Kinsella because he has certain things that he's not so good at, but he has a very reliable set of strengths. Whereas I don't think you can say the same about McKenty. I think he's more of a left field pick, really. So for me, I think the midfield has to be strengthened.
I think if we compare Comley with Kinsella, Comley does a similar job defensively and has more range of passes coming out. So I think he maybe comes ahead of Kinsella on that. And it could be that Comley is the guy in there and not McKenty. We wait to see. It's just speculation on my part that he's going to be the guy in there. It could be the backup for centre half. And if Daniels was to go, he may be part of that back three.
Okay.
But it looked impressive. The thing is, it's only 2 or 3 games at the end of the season when there's nothing riding on it. But it did look good, McKenty. He did look comfortable on the ball, bringing the ball forward in midfield.
Yeah. No, I agree. And listen, hopefully he can have a really belting season. It's just I'd want to see a bigger sample size really before I.
I understand. I understand that. Maybe it's just my positive mindset that I'm just my optimistic mindset.
Positive mindset, Si.
I've got to be very optimistic mindset supporting Walsall, haven't we?
You've got to be optimistic. Yeah, absolutely.
Some pain. I think up until about a week ago, I was really nervous that we were going to be in a relegation fight. But the signing of Hussey and the Priest, and I think Sturk is a decent addition as well. I think that sort of gives me some more confidence that we're getting the right kind of players in.
I actually think, controversially perhaps, I think Sturk is probably the best addition of the lot. Yeah, I think that's a great signing. So,
Mansfield saw quite a lot of him. Mansfield tried to buy him off the Blues, didn't they?
Yeah. I think he's. Do you know what? I'm glad as well that he's now got this opportunity to really build something with his career, because I think he was never quite going to make the grade at Blues realistically, and I think that he's had a series of loan moves, whereas now he's got an opportunity to make a home for himself. And listen, I think he could go on to. I say he was never going to make the grade. I think it was going to be difficult for him because I think he needed to find a home somewhere. So he might
end up going back. Don't you?
Yeah, he might end up going back up to championship level in the next few years. But I think he needs to settle down somewhere first and find some momentum. So I'm glad
I think it's the same for him as it is for Ronan Mayer. Without game time, they'll just drift out the game. They need game time. They need to be playing as good a level as they can. And the time is now for them to get games, isn't it? And Walsall is a good place for young players to get game time.
Sure.
As far as the issue with the development of players coming through, Walsall have used it previously and perhaps stepping more into that again now, and that is picking up released players from the likes of the Championship and the Premier League, and then sort of effectively grabbing a player at 20 and trying to bring him into the team 2021 rather than trying to develop your own and getting those into the team.
Yeah.
So, maybe that's the route. But I mean,
Yeah, so sometimes you can get a different quality of player, can't you, from
yeah.
by picking them up from those Premier League academies. So I've got to make my predictions in a few weeks, my 1 to 24s for League Two. So I wanted to ask you a couple of questions, Simon. First of all, what would be the reason to be massively behind Walsall for next season and think next season could be something really special?
Well, it's all down to which strikers we're bringing in, Gabriel. I think if Walsall weren't to bring any strikers in now, I think we'd struggle to get to halfway massively. In fact, I think we'd be sort of struggling around 16th at best. I think with the current front line, we bring in some quality players up front that can convert some goals. So I think we've got a solid defence. The defence should be solid enough. If we've got to bring some players in who can score some goals, some proper quality, then we've got reason to think that top 7 is possible. It's going to be a tough one, I think. And Mat Sadler, what we said with the underwhelming appointment was he needs to have an experienced coach alongside him. The first rumor that was this guy called Wing from some non-league side was going to be his assistant, which scared everybody, I think. More recently, Kelly.
Andy Wing, maybe?
Andy Wing, that's it, yeah, that's the one.
I want to say Oxford City, but don't quote me on that. But
I think it's. I did a video. I did a video on it because he had been at the training ground. Somebody spotted him at the training ground, so he's involved in some way, but not as his main assistant. Maybe he's part of his coaching team, but not the main assistant. David Kelly is one that's rumoured to be coming alongside him, which he's worked with Billy Davis, of course. So he would be a good assistant, I think. And
yeah, I definitely think some experience is really important for a young manager. So hopefully Mat Sadler can get that. It's interesting. I asked you what would be the reason to be massively behind Walsall this season, and you said, if they don't get the right striker, they could be 16. And so I kind of want to flip that on its head then, and so presumably, not getting the right striker would be the reason to be concerned for Walsall for next season.
Yeah. But absolutely, yeah. I think we haven't finished our business yet, and as I say, getting the right striker in will determine where Walsall are going to finish next season. We get DJ and Andrew Dallas in, for example, and it could be that we're challenging top 7.
Yeah,
but it's all going to be very tight next season. There's some very good teams in there.
For me, Ronan Mayer or Isaac Hutchinson are the reasons for me to be excited about Walsall next season, because I think either of them could really flourish.
Okay.
Yeah, and
I didn't fully get your question. Now I understand what you're saying.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So let's reframe that again. What would be the reason to think next season for Walsall could be a really special one?
That would be Ronan Mayer, without doubt. Could be a season where he arrives, displaces Hutchinson, and starts getting in the goals. Because he scored goals at whatever level he's played at, Ronan Mayer, so far. So I think if he starts getting proper game time rather than the occasional 3-minute cameo, if he starts getting regular game time, he will be scoring goals. And maybe him and Hutch perhaps together. I mean,
that could be an exciting proposition, wouldn't it? If they could make like a box midfield work or something with like a 3-4-2-1 with Hutchinson and Mayer. I like that idea.
Ronan Mayer's he's quite good defensively as well. Obviously, his strength is going forward, but I mean, he's capable all round midfield. And Sturck, obviously, seeing what happens with him, whether he sort of hits it off and gets going. And a player I mentioned earlier, Liam Gordon, I think he will be a massive improvement on last season.
Okay.
Yeah, I think his confidence is coming now. We had a chat with him, actually, myself and Stephen, off the channel, and telling him he's just got to go for it, because he seems to be holding back all the time.
Well, if Liam Gordon wins Player of the Year in League Two, that we'll know who to give the credit to.
Well, that's, yeah, of course.
Absolutely. Listen, Simon, it's been such a pleasure to chat about the Sadlers with you this morning. Before I let you go, just talk to us about your plans for Walsall Fan TV, the joy and the pain for next season and beyond.
Well, things have been developing behind the scenes. We've explored TikTok, so we're now into TikTok and that sort of stuff. So the numbers are flying.
You're really getting into the modern age, Simon. There,
I am. My mentor, who's a best friend of mine, Dazzling Dave, who runs Always Wolves YouTube channel. He's my mentor, and he said, "Oh, you got to get on TikTok," and I'm like, "Oh no." But I'm sort of starting to get into that now. So we've got that, and also recent development. We've now using a podcast, and we're part of the TalkSport network. So we've been invited by TalkSport to be the Walsall representative for League Two.
Brilliant.
So that's pretty special. So that's a nice endorsement of what we've been doing on the channel.
Yeah.
So that's good. Launching a website as well. So I've got a couple of writers already agreed for that. So it's all exciting stuff, really. It's all exciting stuff.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, I'm really excited for what Walsall Fan TV has in store for next season, and hopefully for Walsall Football Club as well. Thanks so much for your time, Simon. We really appreciate it. Good luck to the Sadlers for next season and beyond. The joy and the pain. Do you want to do the quick? I forget what the motion is now again.
Joy and the pain.
The joy and the pain.
It's joy and the pain, and that's for the win, and then that's for a defeat.
Oh, okay, brilliant.
Hopefully, a bit more joy next season.
Hopefully, a bit more joy. Absolutely. This has been EFL Debate, the Walsall Summer Deep Dive. Thanks to you for watching at home, and we'll see you again very soon.
Cheers.